This is definitely a accountability post for a lot of different things. I have not been actively posting the way that I was for a lot of different reasons, but I've missed, coming on here and chopping it up with y'all. But also, I need to hold myself accountable to some of the things that I have said that I wanted to work on and get better at, and have just dropped the ball because life right now is just out of control. So, one of the things that I have said that I wanted to get better at is political illustrations. It's two things actually. I have an interest in the court and court illustrations, but also political editorial illustrations. And I have been doing two to three things at the same time. So one thing is building political illustrations into my creative practice, into my daily creative practice. The other thing is researching. Like, that is a huge part of political illustrations. And I'm going to share with you all like what that has looked like. And then lastly, some of the kind of self study pieces that go along with that. Because I'm working on a larger project that will incorporate this process. And yeah, so it's accountability for me to post because that's what I enjoy, share with you all, but then also share out the things that I have been studying so that it can just be more of an integrated aspect to my creative process. I have like different buckets of interests or things that I am usually drawn to for my practice. So that's birds. I enjoy sketching fruit, vegetables, the southern landscape as well. And I'm adding now or being more intentional about, hi there, being more intentional about political illustrations and how do I incorporate the research that is needed in that into my daily practice. So, starting off with my creative process, one of the political, if you will, kind of newsworthy things that I have been focusing on has been Nicki Minaj and her commentary on alignment with the current administration. I found that very interesting. So I started sketching her, and I think I have a video on here about that, but I know I made an Instagram post about it. And I started just sketching her, like what does she look like to me? And I have a few pictures of that or a few sketches of that, but that's where I just started. I started with like, what does she look like? Like, what version of her am I interested in? Am I drawn to? So this is just like an example of like what I interpret Nicki Minaj to look like right now. And so then I was like, okay, I'm interested in Nikki and her commentary. And I think it will be important to remember her in this moment. I think it's important to capture her commentary. This kind of started back in December of 2025. I would say roughly until maybe like February, beginning of March. She had this huge kind of mainstream media presence related to this alignment with the current administration. And so I was like, I want to remember that. I want to capture that. So, how do I do it? And also, how do I do it in my style? So then I was like, okay, I enjoy drawing birds. That's my jam. I love to draw birds. How do I bring that more into this practice as well? So I really love pink finches. And to me, this is what a pink finch looks like. And so then I was like, and I wrote it alongside here. This is from February 7th of this year. Nicki Minaj as a pink finch. Like, what is that? How does that feel for me? Like, what does that what does it represent, to have Nicki Minaj be a pink finch, and is it would she wear like a Barbie? Um, would she wear like a Barbie necklace? Is that a way to identify her? And then I started drawing the face different ways. I'm like, okay, do we need a mic in the shot? Does her hair need to be a certain way? Do we need a face at all? Right. So this is kind of what my creative process initially started out with. How do I want to what's my focus for my political illustrations, and then what am I drawing, like what am I sketching. So that's where my initial creative like practice looked like. So then I was like, I need to like research. I need to look up political cartoons, editorial illustrations, and see like what are some of the folks talking about related to this. And in my arts, I have an arts and culture playlist. In that arts and culture playlist on my YouTube page, I saved all of the talks from different political illustrators, political cartoonists, editorial illustrators. Like, these are the words that I was looking for. And I wrote down a few of the like questions that these folks were asking and their tips. I was looking for tips on how do you get into being a political illustrator? How do you get to call yourself a political cartoonist, right? And so some of the things that they shared was look through the headlines. What are you interested in? And so that's how I came to again, this focus on Nicki Minaj. I was very drawn to that and her shift in language. So for me, that's what I, was focusing on at that time. The other thing, the other tips that they said was what's interesting, So, and that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Like, what's interesting to you, or what is interesting as it relates to what is trending, right? So, Nicki Minaj was really interesting to me because, in general, Black women, Black rappers, and feminism, Black feminism is just something that I talk about, and more on my TikTok. And so Nicki Minaj specifically aligning with the current administration was really interesting to me. So that for me was a really good tip. Like, what is interesting to me? Is it something that's already connected to things that are within my wheelhouse, within my orbit, stuff that I already talk about? And or is it things that are trending right now on social media in general, like things that people are just talking about, right? The next tip that they gave was like humor. What's the important message? Is there something that needs to be remembered? So that was like super interesting to me. And so that's how this idea of, how do I make, like, I love this sketch of her, and also I'm very interested in, like, how do I make it humorous? And so that's how the Barbie necklace kind of came into this idea. Also the mic, and kind of playing around with like what her hair would be representative of. So this is me kind of playing around with humor. And then the piece about what's the important message, why is this something that needs to be remembered, right? And so that is the other part of not only the research, but also like my creative practice as well. Like what are important elements that need to be remembered related to, you know, what I'm trying to show in the sketch. And these are not complete sketches, right? Like this doesn't necessarily tell a story yet, but I'm building up to how do I story tell with my political illustrations. Again, like what's important? Why is this important to remember? And I'm building the elements to be able to tell this story about this time period for her and for others, that have been listening and watching. Is a mic important related to storytelling? Is the Barbie necklace, important related to storytelling? So then the other, I watched a second video, and this one was really good. It's called Creating an Editorial Cartoon with Isaiah Broussard, and it's from November of 2021. Again, all the videos that I'm referencing and pulling out these tips from can be found in my arts and culture playlist if you're interested in it as well. But one tip that I pulled from the video by Isaiah Broussard was like the question that I gathered was, what local issues am I concerned about? What do I have a strong opinion about, right? So thinking about those first tips about look through the headlines, what are the things that you have a strong opinion about? What are the things that I have a strong opinion about? And could build a story from, right? So it's not just like what I interpreted that as is, it's not just about like what's trending, because I'm not necessarily connected to many of the political kind of headlines that come out, right? Like I need to have a connection to it. And this is for me. And so what are the connections that I'm saying, or what are the connections that I'm seeing in the different headlines that I am drawn to? And a lot of times it's like local issues. So data centers, affordable housing, what's going on with ICE, right? And I have a few other kind of larger topics, but these are just examples, again, to help me continue to think about how I'm developing my thoughts and voice around this interest and this focus on political illustrations, and also like how it is helpful for me to think about it in that way so that I have more of a focus, so that I'm not just reading and taking in everything that might be considered political news. I have something very specific that I research and look at and look up to see if there's anything new that has come out. The other thing that was interesting about this video too was he he meaning Isaiah Broussard from the video that I referenced. He said that his thoughts, he thought about like what what could he caricature about the political issue. And so the focus is also on what to caricature. So, like I said, I am more of an expressive drawer. I'm not a realistic person. So my sketches, my drawings are always going to be more expressive. It's going to kind of capture the energy of the person, not necessarily just the direct likeness. And so it's like, what is it about Nicki Minaj that I want to caricature? And so that's again helping me to think about how I'm building this story related to this time period and her thoughts. And then I'll show you all, I have a few more examples about how I continue to think about caricatures. Um, okay. Okay, that's all I want to say about that. Um, Maybe I should keep talking about caricatures since that's where we're at. Um, okay. I'll just keep talking about caricatures so that I can have a little bit of continuity and I'm not jumping all the way around in this video. Um, I saw a I saw a video of an artist named Kendra L. And she was sketching and drawing little cards that she was going to hand out at protests in her area. And from that video, she was sketching, this was for the No Kings rally. She was sketching cards that she was going to hand out. And her sketch was inspired by a political illustrator named Anne Telenase. And I was introduced to Anne Telenase through Kendra L, who is here on YouTube. So this is not how I would draw Trump, but I thought it was interesting to think about caricatures. Like, how do you caricature someone? And so I found this to be interesting again in this whole like thought process of me focusing in on Nicki Minaj. And so I clearly added the pink finch, which is the bird that I like to draw. And so again, it's like, is the caricature me drawing these folks as a pink finch? And does it need to be like realistic? Like, do you need to look at this pink finch with like what would be considered like a human face on it to know that this is Trump? Or can I draw this like a bird and then put like the crown on the bird's head and then it's assumed that this is Trump, right? So then I was like, okay, Nicki Minaj, Nicki Minaj as a pink finch. Do we need her real face and a body, or can I just keep it like something along these lines? So that's how I'm thinking through like a caricature right now. Like, does it need to be something more realistic on the pink finch's body, or can it be a bird face and we get the picture of who this is, and then we just ensure that as we're storytelling, we have these different elements like a Barbie necklace and a mic and like real people hair on the bird in the sketch, in the drawing, for folks to understand, right? Sorry about that. I got a call. Okay. So those are my initial thoughts about political illustrations. This is like my first attempt to keep myself accountable with this because, like I said, I am working on a larger project that will include all of the illustrations and themes and topics that I've been drawn to related to this. But for right now, this is kind of you all, well, not kind of, it is. This is like behind the scenes or like, me building my understanding about how I want to incorporate this into my creative practice and also I don't consider myself a that's not my title. I don't consider myself like a political illustrator, but if I would call myself that at some point or that I'm incorporating that more into my creative practice, like how do you build that? Um okay. I do have some additional thoughts about like what I'm working on next with this. Because I actually have to build like the next step. That's what I'm trying to say. The next step is to actually build a story around the some of the things that Nicki Minaj was saying like during this time period, and it would be a story of like her comments at the United Nations. It will also be her comments about the SAVE Act, SAVE. So that's the next step is to then move what I decide on from this into like an actual story.